Colombia's president deploys more soldiers to the city of Popayan to quell protesters. Ethiopians rally against the United States for imposing sanctions over the conflict in the Tigray region. And people in Cyprus vote in parliamentary elections amid a corruption scandal. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Colombian President Iván Duque has ordered a 25% increase in the military's manpower in the city of Popayan to disperse protesters of the national strike.
We have opened the way to fully implement this military assistance in the city of Popayan and in the department of Cauca. We have specified the following. For the city of Popayan, there will be a 25% increase in the Army's manpower to accompany the military assistance. We are going to accompany strategic supply processes in different parts of the department of Cauca, and together with the governor's office, the mayor's office, the interior ministry, and of course, the accompaniment of the authorities, we also hope to accelerate the process of unblocking the roads.
Still in Colombia, Cali Mayor Jorge Ospina has announced that on May 28, the day Colombia marked a full month of nationwide anti-government protests, the prosecutor's office reported 13 homicides.
May 20th, 2021 is a tragic day, a painful day, and a day that has meant death in our territory and our land. However, we still cannot determine if all the deaths we have had on May 28th are connected and integrally linked to the protests. It is important to note that the prosecutor's office reports 13 homicides on May 28th.
Meanwhile, protesters have vowed to carry on with the national strike despite violent repression from security forces.
We are not going to tire of the national strike, because we are continuing in the fight, because here I am for my students, for a better future for them and for my daughter. No more. We are not invisible to the state.
We want to work with dignity. We want guarantees, that the government gives guarantees to us, to the youth.
Hundreds of Colombians and Spanish supporters have marched in the streets of Madrid in support of Colombia's national strike. Protesters were carrying large banners that read "Sos Colombia" and "Support the national strike" while waving Colombian flags. The national strike began in Colombia on April 28, triggered by the proposed but now withdrawn tax reform bill by President Iván Duque. The month of protest has left at least 59 people dead. According to the Defense Ministry, more than 2,300 civilians and uniformed personnel have been injured.
We are also demanding the Spanish government evaluates its free trade agreements with Colombia, which are sustained under human rights clauses, which pretend that democracy exists in Colombia, when evidently it's a dictatorship and there is a genocide, which makes it seem like in Colombia there is a civil war, with people defending themselves with makeshift shields.
A batch of 700,000 doses of the Chinese Sinovac vaccine has arrived in Ecuador. The shipment landed this Saturday at Quito's Mariscal Sucre Airport at 3 p.m. local time. With this latest shipment, the doses delivered to Ecuador reached nearly 3.5 million, mainly made up of Pfizer, AstraZeneca, and Sinovac vaccines. According to health authorities, about 500,000 people have been fully vaccinated in the country. Ecuador registered 1,567 new cases of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, and the total number of infections had reached almost 425,000. Thousands of people have protested against Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro on Saturday in Rio de Janeiro, calling for his impeachment and criticizing his handling of the pandemic. Many protesters demand for the vaccination process to be accelerated and for the return of the $115 world emergency aid, which is now between $30 and $50. The crowd marched through Rio's downtown with flags and drums, demanding the impeachment of Bolsonaro. Protests also took place in other big cities of the country.
We are here because of education, health, and the life of the Brazilian people are in danger. We have a president that, instead of making Brazil an international example, he made us a lab of new virus strains.
I'm here to fight for the rights of those in need, for the right of my children, for my right to live, to have vaccines for all. It's a government of incompetence that is ruining our country, ruining our forest, ruining the poor population, the country's foundation.
Our correspondent Brian Meir has more details about the nationwide protests against President Bolsonaro.
In over 200 cities across Brazil today, protests are underway against the far-right government of Jair Bolsonaro, demanding out with Bolsonaro, vaccines for everyone, and food on the table. The protests were organized by a coalition of labor unions and social movements, and in most cities they've been going relatively peacefully with large crowds holding up signs, but in the city of Recife, police have opened fire with rubber bullets and tear gas grenades against protesters. According to the lieutenant governor of Pernambuco state, where Recife is located, these police are acting rogue. They're not under orders from the government. And City Councilwoman Liana Cirne was brutally attacked at close range in the face with pepper spray by military police who left her lying on the ground. Workers' Party President Gleisi Hoffmann said, "It's a risk to go out. We're worried about people's health, but at the same time, for people who don't have jobs, they have to go out on the streets exposing themselves to the risks of COVID-19 every day because of the growing number of millions who are now unemployed because of Jair Bolsonaro's disastrous handling of the economy. Many Brazilians are forced to go out every day anyway because the government's not giving them enough support to keep food on their tables during the pandemic." This was the first major nationally coordinated street protest since the pandemic began. And the way things are going in Brazil, it's definitely not going to be the last.
At least 4 people have been killed in a hospital fire in the Brazilian city of Aracaju. A fire partially destroyed a wing of a municipal hospital intended for the treatment of COVID-19 patients in Aracaju in the northeast of Brazil. According to local media, the list of the victims includes a 77-year-old woman. Local authorities reported that there were about 60 patients at the hospital. Causes of the incident remain unknown. More news coming up after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Ethiopia has staged a massive rally in Addis Ababa to rail against the United States imposing sanctions over the conflict in the Tigray region. Demonstrators packed a stadium in the capital for the pro-government rally, chanting against U.S. sanctions and waving posters accusing foreign powers of interfering in Ethiopia's sovereignty. The rally comes after U.S. President Joe Biden condemned the war in Tigray and his administration imposed restrictions on visas and assistance over the 6-month conflict. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government denounced the U.S. sanctions as a resolve to meddle in our internal affairs. The Tigray conflict erupted in November with Prime Minister Ahmed, the winner of the 2019 Nobel Prize, sent troops to confront the leaders of the Tigray's ruling party, accusing them of attacks on federal army camps.
America and its associates, without understanding the ways of the TPLF forces and its disastrous acts, they are interfering in our domestic affairs by imposing travel sanctions and prerequisites which can by no means be accepted. They should stop and think thoughtfully about this issue to correct it.
I came here today to oppose the idea of foreign countries trying to interfere in our domestic affairs and babysit us. We are a sovereign country. As a sovereign country, our people and our government decide for our country.
The head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohamed Al-Menfi, has visited Tunisia for talks on the two countries' security issues and economic cooperation. The Libyan leader met with his Tunisian counterpart, President Kais Saied, and the two discussed on building peace ahead of Libya's general elections scheduled for December this year. Said is the first foreign president to visit Libya following the vote by Libya's parliament for a government of national unity.
We also discussed security cooperation. I know that this is a very dangerous time, especially in our region. We need to have security stability. The security dimension is the most important issue, and we have to focus on it. The security of Libya is also the security of Tunisia and vice versa.
The Tunisian people stand by the brotherly people of Libya for the reconstruction of its institutions and for the securing of this time until the expression, through voting of the Libyan themselves by their own will, so that they can choose what they want without any guidance from anyone. We stand with them.
The government of the Democratic Republic of Congo has mistakenly announced that another volcano had erupted, later admitting it was a false alarm. The scare comes after a week Mount Nyiragongo erupted, killing at least 31 and prompting around 400,000 people to flee the area. However, the country's seismologists reported 61 earthquakes in a 24-hour period on Saturday around Mount Nyiragongo, saying that the volcano's crater continues to collapse, which contribute to the earthquake and cause ash emissions visible from the city of Goma. Around 3,000 people fleeing Goma sought shelter at a temporary camp in Rugerero over the Rwanda border. But on Saturday, an estimated 1,200 had left to return to Goma.
I came on Saturday around 6 p.m. We saw the volcano erupt. Children were saying, "Look in Virunga, the volcano is erupting." So we ran away on Saturday. Sunday, they said it had reduced, so we ran back home. When we came back home, we discovered our houses had been burned down. Everything had disappeared. Nothing was left. So we decided to come back to Gisenyi. The Rwandan authorities told us we could not stay there. We had to go on a new site in Busasamana.
DR Congo President Felix Tshisekedi has said that the situation is under control following Mount Nyiragongo's eruption.
Then there's the problem of the return of these displaced people. And for me, this is the most delicate issue because the day they return, some will find themselves without a home, some will be without food, some will be sick. So that too needs to be anticipated. I want to go and see for myself how our compatriots are being looked after, but also to give them comfort and support, and to tell them that the war of Congo is with them. I begin by expressing my compassion and solidarity with the people of Goma. These compatriots from the East have constantly been victims of many abuses, sometimes by armed groups, and now even by nature herself.
Rwandan President Paul Kagame has condemned France for finally acknowledging its role in the 1994 genocide. President Kagame described the acknowledgement as a big step, even though France has not yet apologized for contributing to the bloody conflict. French President Emmanuel Macron recognized France's role in the killing of nearly 1 million people during a historic visit to the East African nation this week. Kagame, who led the Tutsi rebellion that ended the genocide, has regularly accused France of complicity in the crime, but French leaders were determined not to admit it.
A stage has been set where we can see a better and maybe deeper relationship between Rwanda and France. So I think I'm upbeat about it. I think it was positive, it was good that it happened, and many more things are going to happen after the visit. We should not allow acrimony or misunderstandings around or about the truth to go on forever. We must be able to be sensitive to the feelings and opinions of the survivors directly, specifically, and also the future that everyone has to live.
More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Cyprus voters have headed to the polls for parliamentary elections amid a corruption scandal. A record 658 candidates representing 15 parties are running for 56 seats in parliament before an electorate of more than 500,000. The election is limited to government-held areas, excluding the northern third of the island, where a breakaway Turkish Cyprus state holds sway. Ultra-nationalists looking to exploit the anti-establishment mood have also played on concerns over migration, another issue for the European Union's member state. The present administration has faced criticism for a lucrative cash for passports scheme it had to abandon amid allegations of corruption in November 2020.
All people experience much corruption during the last 10-15 years in Cyprus, and it's good to see that every time we see new people and younger people in the parliament, rather than seeing that same people are voted and elected every time.
New Zealand authorities have declared a state of emergency in the province of Canterbury as the region was pounded by heavy rain. The extreme weather have forced thousands of people to abandon their homes. Meanwhile, acting emergency management minister Chris Fofoy said about 3,000 homes were at risk and the army had been mobilized to assist the evacuations if necessary. The New Zealand Meteorological Service has issued a red warning for the area with up to 300 millimeters of rain expected to fall in the inland areas. The coastal Christchurch, the main city of Canterbury, forecasters expect about 100 millimeters to fall, well above the monthly total average for May. A ferry in eastern Indonesia has caught fire with nearly 200 people on board. The incident forced passengers and crew to jump into the sea, but causing no casualties. The fire broke out 15 minutes after the vessel departed Ternate, the provincial capital of North Maluku province, at around 7 a.m. local time. The Sea Transportation Authority said all 181 passengers, including 22 children and 14 crew members, were rescued and safely evacuated to a nearby island. Authorities still investigating the cause of the incident.
81 passengers are recorded in the manifest and 14 crew on board. Until now, the Joint Search and Rescue Team is still listing the passengers who have been rescued.
Japan is facing growing calls to cancel the Tokyo Summer Olympics, scheduled to open on July 23rd, with concerns over the COVID-19 pandemic. An online petition calling for the cancellation of the Tokyo Olympics has received over 400,000 signatures in just a few weeks. Governors want to contain the spread of the new variants and ease the medical crisis in their cities. But there is criticism that Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga is making the Olympics his priority. Amid pressure from district governments, Suga on Friday announced a 3-week extension of the COVID-19 state of emergency in Tokyo, Osaka, and 7 other prefectures to end on June 20th. Restrictions such as prohibiting restaurants from serving alcohol or offering karaoke services and require them to stop operation by 8 p.m. will stay in effect beyond May 31st. Sri Lanka has banned fishing along an 80-kilometer coastal area as the country battles to clear plastic waste coming from a burning ship. The country's fisheries minister say that the government will compensate the thousands of fishermen affected, while adding that the seafood currently in the market was safe for consumption. Authorities have also deployed thousands of security personnel in hazmat to clean the beaches of plastic waste and other debris from the Singapore registered cargo ship burning since May 20th. The fire broke out as the ship waited to enter the Colombo port. Authorities believe the fire was caused by the nitric acid leak.
Impact on this one, the chemical is on our immediate vicinity, where it increases the chemical content as well as the alkalinity, acidity, and also the temperature of the water. It has its consequences and impacts on the altering biodiversity and disappearing of some the phytoplankton. The plastic pollutant, this, though it can travel a long distance, but there's no toxicity immediately from the plastic pellets, but once the fish swallow it, it does. Sometimes it would not be able to excrete it, and so that the food system clogged and the fish may die.
Belarus opposition supporters in Poland have protested against the detention of Belarusian journalist Roman Protasevich. Protesters gathered in Warsaw to reject the detention of the 26-year-old opposition journalist and activist who was on board the Ryanair flight, which was diverted by a Belarusian military jet in order to arrest Protasevich last Sunday. The White House announced it was working with the European Union on a list of target sanctions against key members of Lukashenko's regime. Meanwhile, economic sanctions against 9 Belarusian state-owned enterprises were imposed by Washington in April following a crackdown on pro-democracy protests will come into effect on June 3rd.
Expressing concern is one thing, but the other thing we need is action. We need rapid action towards Lukashenko's regime because it keeps pushing the boundary of what is possible for him. Hijacking a plane with Roman Protasevich on board was a serious crime. That's breaking international law. We are all afraid for Roman's life and health, and we are concerned because it wasn't just putting his life in danger, but also the lives of over 120 people who were on board. The situation is another wake-up call for Belarusians in Poland.
Nobody think that Lukashenko a real politician. Nobody. All the people think that he's some guy, a terrorist and a clown. And the main things today is in the European Union also, I want to say that to make more sanctions to Lukashenko and to Putin also, because Putin supports Lukashenko. He gives him a lot of money, and this money comes to the forces which terrified all the Belarusians. So this is really important for every Belarusians, and I hope that European Union help us, and the Polish government, of course. I know that it just makes time, but it will be.
And with this story, we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And don't forget to join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.